The big voice guy just reminded me I left my coffee down the hall. I'll get to that after the break. Welcome, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. Happy Friday. Well, I say happy Friday because it's the end of the week for most of us. The business going on Capitol Hill, I don't think is going to make many of us happy. We went over this yesterday. Great detail. The budget proposal, which is, I'm sorry, it's just more irresponsible spending. And I think you can give a synopsis of what this is that the political parties can't agree on what to cut. The only thing they can agree on is increased spending. And I think it was on a later version of the Chris Salcedo Show that I came up with this. I am tired, maybe it was here. I'm tired of having to buy defending this country from Democrats for loser programs that only serve to keep them in elected office. That never achieve the goals. For example, Social Security. Social Security, and I've done a lot of writing about Social Security over the years. Social Security is the biggest boondoggle ever foisted upon the American people. You know why? Because each and every one of us could do better if we saved on our own, instead of allowing Uncle Sam to take our money and then spend our money and then get it back to us at a significantly lower rate of return. For whites, the rate of return is less than 1%, from 1% to less than 1%. For minorities, there's a negative rate of return, meaning Social Security is racist. It's racist. So, and again, it's because government rarely does anything better than the private sector, than you can do for yourself. Why is it that the government insisted that it take control over mandatory chunks of your paycheck? Because the government was saying, you're all too stupid to manage your own lives. And if you go out and take your life savings and you buy a stereo with it or you buy a car with it, and then you become indigent, then you become society's problem. And we don't want to have that happen. Problem solved is you still take the money out of the paycheck, but it goes into an account that you can't touch until you're 63, and the account is yours. The government has and it grows interest-free. The government has no claim to that money whatsoever. Now, how many Democrats do you think would sign on to that plan? None. You know why? Because they do not control it. And that's what it's all about. Ultimately, it's about control over you. So Donald Trump has this budget, so-called budget, in front of him today. Conventional wisdom says he's going to sign it. Rand Paul last night hit the Senate floor, and I've got, let's see, how long is this thing? This is, it was all good. I happened to tune in just before got off the floor. And he was up there. He was pushing the vote up toward midnight. And everybody was preparing for a government shutdown. Donald Trump doesn't want to shut down, so he's going to sign this monstrosity, this terrible thing. So we'll be covering some of that, and I'll play that soundbite. Rand Paul, hey, for a libertarian, a conservative libertarian, there's a lot that he says that makes sense. There's also something I want you all to consider. There is breaking news in the Russia collusion scandal. It seems another Democrat has been caught colluding with Russians. His name is Senator Mark Warner. Now, many of you may recognize the name of this slimeball as one of the guys out there pushing very hard, trying to accuse Donald Trump of doing what he himself did. What does the Salcedo Show axiom say? Liberals often project qualities onto others that they themselves have in abundance. And Senator Mark Warner, I think, is typical of a lot of these other Democrats who know that they're guilty of colluding with Russia to influence our elections. And Mark Warner actually is caught in a text message saying, we can't have a paper trail on this. He tries to cover it up. This guy's on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I mean, seriously. One of the committees investigating Donald Trump. It's sick. It's sick. Kimberly Strassel from the Wall Street Journal took to Twitter because you and I, and you know what, we're guilty. Not we. I am guilty. I am guilty of not hitting these stories as hard because of the other stuff blowing up on Capitol Hill, budget and all that. Kimberly Strassel took note. Now, we did talk about it. In my defense, we talked about it a couple of days, but we didn't spend, an entire show, or we didn't spend an entire hour talking about it. Why isn't the mostly unredacted Grassley memo, she writes on Twitter, one of 5 posts, why isn't the mostly unredacted Grassley memo front page news? Here's why. Because it confirms the Nunes memo and blows up the Schiff talking points, which the media ran with. Here's number 2. It is confirmation that the FBI's FISA application relied on the dossier and a news article, and worse, on the credibility of a source in the employ of the Clinton campaign. Number 3. It is proof the FBI did not tell the court the extraordinarily partisan provenance of the dossier. And number 5. Sorry, where'd number 4 go? Maybe I didn't retweet number 5 or number 4 because she's in it. Hold on a minute. Let me just pull up the original. Okay, here's number 4. It provides evidence that the FBI presented the FISA court with materially false evidence in the claim that Steele had not talked to the press, which we all know he did, which we all know he was feeding all of these leftist news organizations. And then shows that even after Steele admitted under oath that he had, the FBI did not tell the FISA court in its renewal. That is key. Christopher Steele was interviewed by the FBI and lied to the FBI. How many of you have been told by liberals that lying to the FBI is bad and you should be prosecuted? Oh, yes, those who were applauding General Michael Flynn being charged with lying to the FBI. Now, why is General Flynn under indictment, and why is Christopher Steele roaming around free? One might think that higher-ups in the FBI don't want Mr. Steele to be in court and spill what he knows. Let me get to number 5. The Grassley memo now, it provides evidence that Steele was getting information from the Clinton team itself via the State Department. So now, not only do we have a dossier based on unnamed shady Russians, but on Sidney Blumenthal. How much of this was engineered by the Clinton campaign from the very start? Kim Strassel, Wall Street Journal, one of the few Wall Street Journal folks that I actually still read and still trust. Folks, this is as shady as it comes. I want to go back to her point number 4. Christopher Steele, former MI6, a man that we now know was desperate not to see Donald Trump become president. He lies to the FBI. Oh, I'm not talking to the media. I'm not saying anything to the media. And we have it confirmed that he was. He was feeding stories to places like Yahoo News and others. He lies to the FBI. Why is he still walking around? Why isn't he in custody? Why haven't the Brits taken him to custody on our behalf and marched his elitist British rear end right over here? I can tell you why. It's because there are elements inside of this government, the Obama holdovers. We don't want to talk to Christopher Steele. How many of you guys remember the Batman movie? This was I can't remember which one this was. A new DA in town. I think it was number 1. We don't want to see what's in the gangster's crate. Come on, these are cops. Come on, that's the gangster's crate. Well, open it up, says the DA. Hey, we don't want to see what's in the gangster's crate. These are so-called law enforcement officials in your government saying, we don't want to know what Christopher Steele knows. We don't want him naming names, so he's not in custody. Is that justice? Although Michael Steele, a man who wore the uniform of this country, and lied to the FBI. We don't know about what. It could have been about, how often he flosses his teeth for all we know. I don't know. And I'm not making excuses for General Flynn, who kept things from me and kept things from you when he didn't admit that he was a foreign agent, that he wasn't a foreign agent, that he was representing a foreign government, which was perfectly legal so long as you register. So this raises so many questions, and now you got the slime ball, Mark Warner, along with other Democrats who are now the fingers. We asked this yesterday. How many of these Democrats didn't collude with Russians to stop Donald Trump from becoming president? How many of them didn't? That's probably a shorter list. 800-281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. That's the phone number here. When we get back, we'll get into the sound bites. I want you to hear from Rand Paul about the budget. And throughout the entire show, we're going to open up, talk about the latest revelations about Mark Warner, talk about what Kim Strauss was talking about, the Grassley memo, which nobody's covering. Fox News is, but nobody else. On purpose, I believe. Where's the Houston Chronicle? Where's the Democrat Morning News? Back in a minute, the Chris Salcedo Show, right here on The Voice. All right. Coffee? Check. Information? Right here in front of me. We'll get to more of that. I want to get a couple of your calls in and what we talked about so far. Budget and also, by the way, the tip of the iceberg, folks. The Grassley memo, tip of the iceberg. There was some testimony given by that guy under a gag order about the Uranium One deal, Hillary Clinton's Uranium One deal. This guy, an FBI insider, gave his testimony. You know he's dying? Russell, did you hear about this? He's got cancer. And before he goes to the grave, he wanted to make sure he told what he knew. One gets the impression that maybe the liberals who were covering for Hillary Clinton inside of this government were hoping he'd expire before he could tell what he knows. Just saying. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. We say, hold on, my screen just disappeared before my eyes. Hold on a second. We say good morning to Fred. Hey, Fred, welcome to the Salcedo Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey.
And I called about the budget, but let me just comment on the issue with the FBI and all that. It's just amazing how much damage is being revealed and uncovered about what happened in the Obama administration. It's terrible. I mean, and we still have all these holdovers in there, and this just goes on and on. But what I called out is the budget. A couple of years ago, around this time, I called in and went off on John Culberson. That may wind up happening again. Just depends on how he voted on this. Mm-hmm. Look, what I see, and I'm kind of starting at the end and working backwards, I just see us charging ahead to the Weimar Republic. And at some point, there's nothing left, but can't afford anything but interest on the debt. At some point, you get to where you can't even afford that. And we have these guys continuing to run up the debt and run up the deficits. There's only two possibilities. They either just don't get it, or they do get it and they just don't care.
No, they get it.
And to me, the only thing they accomplish by kicking the can down the road, you're digging the hole deeper.
Exactly.
It's just harder to get out.
They get it. No, they understand. They just don't care. They recognize the only people who will be harmed by this are everyday Americans, and it won't be them. I mean, that is the caliber of individual we have up there on Capitol Hill. I don't know of anyone other than Rand Paul, who we're going to play here in a minute, who is speaking forthrightly about getting America's budgets under control. Paul Ryan, who used to be one of the biggest deficit hawks that I knew, one of the biggest debt and deficits hawks that I knew, could speak articulately about every dot and tittle inside of the federal government that was excessive. And we went over a couple of them yesterday. He doesn't even talk about that stuff anymore. And nobody is. Nobody wants to talk about it now. And, here comes the basket of biased press, and they're right to print it. The same basket of biased press that was silent when President Obama was adding more to the debt than all of his predecessors combined. Now they're saying, oh, look at the Republicans. They're so in love with debt. They're so in love with deficit spending. And the media is right. They're disingenuous, and I despise them for their selective reporting, but they're right.
Yeah, in my view, this is going to affect the members of Congress. It's going to affect their families. It's going to affect everybody.
How? They've got the money. They've got the power. Their families won't be in squalor when the country goes by the wayside. They'll be the protected class.
I don't see what they could be protected with.
Guns. Guns and look, we've seen this play out in throughout history. Venezuela, you think that fat Maduro goes hungry every night? No. But his people are starving. The women in his country have to go across the border to prostitute themselves just to pay the bills. So, yeah, their constituents will all be laid to waste. The country will be laid to waste, but these so-called leaders, they'll be just fine. They'll be just fine. They'll have no country. But, whichever country does march in and take over because of our insolvency, I'm sure that all of these leaders will convince them that they're the best to administer the new government. Praise God, that's way down the road and never happens, folks. But this is where this type of irresponsibility leads. It was Mo Brooks yesterday who reminded us, you want to be Venezuela? Go take a look at Venezuela. See if you want to be that. We all know from the history books what happens when your currency becomes worthless. And this Congress is continuing the march toward insolvency for the United States. We told you yesterday, $400 billion every single fiscal year, right off the top, is spoken for. That's interest on our massive debt alone. Before we even pay a penny for the Democrats' entitlement programs, failed entitlement programs, or a penny to defend the nation. This government is too big and it spends too much of our money. And in this case, borrows too much of our money from foreign sources. Top, by the way, financiers of our debt, China, Japan. One out of two ain't bad. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. Andy, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, Chris, I finally get a chance to call you.
Hey.
Now that you're in the morning, it's kind of hard to get to pay you a call. How have you been doing?
I've been doing well, thank you. Other than watching my government meltdown, I'm fine.
we're all watching, aren't we?
Yeah.
Hey, I was calling you because I don't know if you heard about the Anons and Q.
The what?
You haven't heard about them?
No.
QAnon, it's a group of anonymous that are posting, leaking, what's going on within the government. And at first I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is legit, but some of the stuff that they posted, it came through. And, if you just kind of go to YouTube and type QAnon, just kind of see what they have to say, because Corsi, have you heard of Corsi? Mr. Corsi, he's talked about, kind of deciphering some of the stuff, and it seems like the Anonymous are communicating, through social media and through other channels. So it's pretty interesting stuff, and it's just kind of giving you information what's going on within the government, because it's pretty bad stuff going on with all this fake dossier stuff.
Oh, no, I get what you're saying, Andy. I just want you to understand the motivation behind these cats. These guys in Anonymous, they want to destroy the United States of America. So even though they're leaking out information that serves the conservative movement for the time being politically by revealing the truth about how shady Democrats are, Anonymous's objective is to destroy the country. They hate America.
So they're trying to this is what I wonder, because on both factions, the Antifa, and then you have the anonymous that are in completely polar opposites.
Well, they're leftists. I mean, from what I know of Anonymous, they're leftists. They don't stand up for democracy. All they stand up for is releasing information. They're anti-government, really. And they don't like government secrets. So anything that can bring down a government, they're all for. They're kind of like think of them this way. Think of them as George Soros. They're George Soros, except they're behind the scenes. George Soros, who I wouldn't be surprised is funding Anonymous. George Soros is also in the headlines, folks. I don't know if you've heard about this. We'll get to that. We'll get to Rand Paul's speech on the Senate floor, which was good. I've got Michael Quinn Sullivan coming on. There is a representative here in the state of Texas who says that Empower Texans is trying to keep teachers from voting. How are they doing this? We'll discuss it. The Chris Salcedo Show on The Voice. Little Birdie has told me that a flyer has gone out. A flyer has gone out in Sarah Davis's
Okay, I've got him. He's ready.
district. And as you can hear there on the VIDA Television Network, the guy who's telling me this is on the phone. State Senator Paul Betancourt. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. You folks on hold, hang on. You got to hear this. Hey, Paul, welcome.
Well, good morning, and more breaking news from the Voice of Texas.
Indeed. So you've got your hands on a Sarah Davis flyer, do you?
I do, and Sarah Davis, by any measurement, is the most liberal Republican member of the House.
Yeah.
Nobody comes close to her vote scores. In fact, her vote score is below Republicans by a lot of them.
Well, because she's a Democrat. We all know she's a Democrat. We all know she shares their values, not ours. So what does
and she took $50,000 from Joe Strauss here recently.
Oh, well, see, that cements it. When the grand poobah of liberalism in the state of Texas, Joe Strauss gives you money, then you know pretty much where your values sit. So what does this flyer say that caught your attention as a sitting Texas senator?
Well, it basically blamed a bill that she was trying to pass failure on the Senate Bill 1 dying in the Senate. And if you all remember this, the Senate Bill 1 was the bill that Lieutenant Governor Patrick and I had about property tax reform and relief. Mm-hmm. And I seem to remember being in the special session where basically the House shoved a take it or leave it version of Senate Bill 1 up, and adjourned a day early and walked away and refused to appoint conferencees.
You know what I would ask Sarah Davis if she were ever brave enough to come onto this program, which she's not. I'd ask her, did she support not going? Was she so confident in the House bill that she couldn't go to conference with the Senate? Did she think that the Senate was so worthless? Did she not respect the Senate enough to be able to take the bill the take it or leave it, do nothing bill that basically papered over and pretended to do something about property taxes? Did she have such a lack of confidence in her own bill that she couldn't conference it with the Senate to maybe come up with a stronger bill? Is that where her mindset was, or did she?
There's no question that listen. When you look at these Straussites at the time,
right?
This is Huberty, this is Sarah Davis, okay, et cetera, that they were just so ingrained in whatever Joe Strauss told them to do.
Yeah.
And if he said we're adjourning a day early and blame the Senate and let's get out of town, let's not have a discussion with them on property tax relief, they did it. And because it was Huberty that made the motion, and Strauss didn't even let there be a floor vote on the adjournment.
Because you wouldn't want to get these guys didn't want to go on the record. They're cowardly. They didn't want to go on the record. And look, I've got to ask you, Paul, that is Sarah Davis in this flyer being honest, or is she hoping that her constituents are as ignorant as she's hoping they are?
She's hoping their constituents are ignorant.
Yeah, because
That's it.
It's by reading it, by what you sent me. Well, hold on, but what you sent me, they're out and out lies. They're out and out lies.
Of course, because this is the political season. It's the primary. Okay, and what really infuriates me about this is that she's running a race against Susana Dockupil. Mm-hmm. Up to this point, there's no member of the Texas Senate that's in the race against her. Lieutenant Governor has not opposed Sarah Davis. I'm sitting there minding my own business, and then this flyer shows up. Yeah. But see, she's done this before, okay? Several months ago, there was an article in the Chronicle about how she had a bill that was going to trigger automatic disaster reappraisal, and how it was the Senate's fault it didn't pass. And so when I looked into it, I found that the bill that she's talking about was actually filed by a really great guy out of Dallas. He's a senator named Van Taylor.
I know Van Taylor. I know him very well.
Right, and he's diligent and hardworking. So there were two bills filed, one in the House, one in the Senate. It's a typical situation. He works with HCAD. He works with the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts.
Right.
He gets a bill. I vote for it. We pass it out. Uh-huh. In March, a month before, Sarah Davis takes the same bill, strips out, takes all the language out of it, and puts it under a House bill. So what happens in my world is if I get a piece of legislation from the House that's good, I just immediately sponsor it and send it on.
Right.
But in Sarah Davis's world, because it doesn't have her name on it, at least from the name of the bill itself.
Wait a minute. So she plagiarized.
She
can't come up. She's not intelligent enough to come up with her own conservative ideas because she doesn't hearken from that world. So she plagiarizes it.
Yes, trying to get a hold of her while he was doing all this because they had filed bills together, and she was too busy. Okay?
Well, you know what? Hey, look, this is what liberal progressives do. They steal other people's work, and they try to make it their own.
Right, because
this is too good.
So Van Taylor comes up with what was a pretty good solution, and passes it, and we all vote for it. And so now look, so with all of this, I can put up with a lot of stuff. It is the silly season, but I'm just not going to put up with out-and-out lies that SB1 died in the Senate.
Paul,
okay?
Sarah deserves something. You needed to throw her a bone. Isn't that the way it works? I mean, even though the idea wasn't hers, she should be able to take credit for it so she can get reelected. The same way she's trying to say she actually passed meaningful tax reform, which she did not. As a matter of fact, she was part of the same cabal that stopped debate on tax reform and basically kept this same irresponsible system in place. And that's the truth, folks. This flyer is complete lies.
Right. And Chris, it's just because, look, I don't understand. Joe Strauss is gone. Okay.
Oh, no.
He's still there.
He's still there. He's still there.
She's taking it. Yeah. Right. Okay. And why she has decided to run against the Texas Senate? Well, just here's Uncle Paul. Yep. This is a bad decision, Sarah. Okay.
Well,
congratulations.
It would be. I think it would behoove maybe a rather public poll of Texas senators, from Van Taylor to yourself to Bob Hall, and say, how much confidence do you have in Sarah Davis? Now, look, we all know she's a left-wing progressive who is, it's hard to determine who's the bigger cheerleader for killing children in utero, whether it's Wendy Davis or Sarah Davis. It's hard to. So on the social issues, we know she's a full-tilt liberal progressive who is a champion for the butcher shop Planned Parenthood.
Now, and rumor has it, and we can let's get Susana Dockupil or whoever's running against Davis on. But the word I had is now the latest thing that Davis is even somehow trying to position herself on the pro-life spectrum somewhere.
Now, really? Really?
If that's happening, it's preposterous. Okay, all right. And with all of this, look, I was there at the special session, Chris. I was there in the last 2 days. I know that Strauss refused to negotiate. I know that he refused to appoint conference committee.
Yep.
I know that he gave us a take it or leave it a bill. And by the way, the bill was so bad when we got to it on measurable tax relief. There were only 4 counties out of 254 that would have gotten it, and of course, none of them are around here. Okay, and so when I see this just garbage that shows up in people's mailboxes, I got 2 choices. I can stand up and say it's garbage, or I can just acquiesce like all these other politically correct people out there and try to ignore it. Well, that's not Paul Betancourt. It's not Uncle Paul, and I'm going to tell you the truth.
Well,
and the truth here is that flyer is an absolute piece of garbage, and it is preposterous to me that we're having to re-debate the stuff that we went through as a group. All the Voice of Texas listeners know the story about how we were desperate for property tax relief. We wanted to pass a bill, but they left the bill that was sent to us with 53 pages of amendments on third reading. Okay,
yeah, didn't
let us tell the folks that what would have happened. It was good to them because nobody in Harris County would have had would have property tax relief, or Montgomery or Fort Bend or Waller, or ring around the rosy. And for Sarah Davis to sit there and blame the Senate and say that the bill died in the Senate when she's part of the Strauss cabal that killed it, okay?
I'm sorry, Paul. This is
infuriating to the max. Sorry, I'm going on too long.
No. This is what liberals do, though. When they want to run from their record, when they can't take responsibility for their own actions, and when their own actions are counter to who they say they are. She claims to be a Republican, but she's undermined the conservative planks of the Republican Party at every turn. There is nothing that says Republican about Sarah Davis. I can't think of one policy where she has actually passed anything that resembles conservatism. She's a Joe Straussite. We all know that she would be a Democrat if the legislature were majority Democrat, and that's who she is. And what you folks in her district have got to ask yourself, is this the person you want to continue to represent you? And all of you other folks who have conservatives in them, like say for example Senator Betancourt here, and you're confident they're going to take the field in their particular contest, you might want to throw some support behind Susanna Dockapil, financial, block walking, and the same thing in Huberty's district with Reginald Grant. Reginald Grant, the Marine, has not thrown in the towel yet, folks. He is still trying to get this leftist Dan Huberty out of there, and at least his name alone could serve to do that. So these are 2 of our big targeted districts that they need to go. This will be a huge blow to Joe Strauss's anti-Texas agenda if we can get rid of Sarah Davis and get rid of Dan Huberty. Paul Betancourt, do you disagree?
Let me say this, okay? The facts of what happened in that special session and what happened in the session before and the session before that about property taxes are clear. Joe Strauss refused any time to even help property tax relief when it became such an issue. He allowed, Dennis Bottom to send out a bill that was a rollback at 6% that would have only helped Parker, Wichita Falls, Williamson, and Comal counties. The rest of the state would not have gotten tax relief.
Hey, I got to scoot to a break, but let's wrap.
But hold on, let me finish this, Chris, because it's important.
Okay.
When I see stuff that comes in the mail that blames the Texas Senate by Sarah Davis for the failure of that bill, it infuriates me because everybody knows the truth except the person writing the mailer.
Well, and I think the person writing the mailer knows the truth, too. I want all you folks who are opening up your property tax bills and actually paying your property tax bills right now, as you write that check out, I want you to remember the names of the people who continued this nonsensical, non-addressed, out-of-control property tax issue. The name of these people: Dan Huberty, Sarah Davis, and Joe Strauss. Paul Betancourt, thank you, sir. I appreciate you being here on the Chris Salcedo Show.
Anytime.
Amigos, later this afternoon, folks, 4 to 6 for your drive home. I'm sure that El Senador and the boys will have plenty to say about this. Hey, Judge Eric Andel, I'm sure he loves Sarah Davis. Of course, he's the Democrat, and if you're a Democrat, there's not much not to love about Sarah Davis. Back in a minute, the Salcedo Show on The Voice. All right, coming up on the Chris Salcedo Show, we'll talk to Michael Quinn Sullivan of Empower Texans. There is a state rep who is accusing Empower Texans of stopping teachers from voting. How is Empower Texans doing? I didn't realize Empower Texans was that powerful. But apparently they can stop teachers from voting. So we'll ask him what nefarious tactics that Empower Texans are employing to prevent teachers from voting. JT, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad you waited.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to, I got like 3 pieces of dynamite in my hand. I got to get rid of all 3 of them. Because I'm going to blow one of my hands off.
All right, let me brace myself. Hold on. Go ahead. Fire away.
Well, they're not dynamite as far as they're dynamite. I got to get rid of them before you interrupt me here. I know you like to stop me real quick.
Well, I want to address each point.
I know. But I always forget them. I get to 3 points and I forget the other 2 because we get lambasted in there.
All right, race through all 3, and then we'll take them on one at a time.
John Corning lambasted Rand Paul last night for wasting everybody's time. That's our buddy right there. Number 2. Now, everybody sit down for this. I'm going to make some enemies. Rush Limbaugh, the biggest faker I've ever seen in my freaking life. Let me tell you why. All day yesterday, he could have spent time on not worrying about what Congress or Senate did because we got Trump and he's not going to sign it. He didn't say one word about Trump. He's carried. Why is it when the Democrats are in power, Rush Limbaugh will not hesitate on what they should do? But now he's just waiting till Trump does something before he says anything so he doesn't look stupid. Why is he not out there saying, do not sign this, Trump?
All right, number 3.
Number 3. See there? That's what I'm talking about. Number 3. Where is number 3?
Hey, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you.
He got in my mind and did it. I don't know how you did it.
It's my Vulcan mind meld. I just did a Vulcan mind meld. What was number 3?
Number 3. I forget number 3.
Dang it. Okay, let me address number 1 and 2 then.
Give me 1 and 2 because I'm pissed.
All right, number 1, John Cornyn. Let me give everybody a sample of what Rand Paul was doing last night on the Senate floor. Hold on, listen to this.
We're on sort of that same curve again. In fact, we may be escalating that curve as we speak. But that enormous debt, we all criticized as Republicans and said it was a bad thing for your government. And there was a debt commission, and there was all of this discussion and a lot of hand-wringing. And I was one of those. I was concerned, but still am concerned. So we have this debt that continues to escalate, and yet what do Republicans do when they are in charge? You remember the stories. If you were asked to help Republicans, they said, well, we took over the House, but now we control 1/3 of government. We can't get everything we want. So it didn't happen. And then we took over the Senate, and we controlled 1/3 of government. They said, well, we have to have the presidency. And then, lo and behold, we won the presidency. We have all the branches of government, and yet we still are putting forward a spending bill that will be the equivalent of $1 trillion deficit.
So basically what he's calling out is Republican hypocrisy. And I think that's why Senator Cornyn didn't like that, because Senator Cornyn plays for the team rather than plays for, sound fiscal policy.
Yes.
So that's, and I understand, hey, nobody likes being called a hypocrite. And I think John Cornyn didn't appreciate being called a hypocrite.
But, excuse me. Now, what about Rush?
Okay, Rush.
Don't touch this, Rush, because he's afraid to make a stand now.
No, he's not. Look, I have told you how much Rush Limbaugh means to me personally, because wait a minute, I'm going to address your point. Okay. I heard the Rush Limbaugh show yesterday, and I heard exactly what you're talking about. And what you got to understand about Rush is when everybody else is doing one thing, Rush is doing something else. Rush is contrarian by his nature. Now, he may revisit this debt sometime today. I don't know. I'm not his producer. I don't know. All I can tell you is that he defies always conventional wisdom. His instinct is to swim upstream and not go with the flow.
You're not even talking about the point, Chris. Love you guys, but come on. Why is he afraid to make a stand now and call out Trump and say do not support you?
I don't know that he is. I waited. I don't know that he is. And you know
All right,
what?
we'll see today.
We'll see what happens today. But again, you know what? We came out yesterday is because I kind of saw the political writing on the wall, and I saw what was going to happen, and that there was going to be no mood for a shutdown, and that we were going to get screwed because of it. And and you know what? Debt has been on our mind throughout the entire tax debate. It is right and proper that we relieve the tax burden on the American people. It is also right and proper that the government stop spending as much. As we have said, all the tax cuts in the world are meaningless unless you also cut government spending. The markets tanked yesterday. Did you guys see this? Markets, another 1,000 point drop in the markets. Primarily, sorry, my fries are done apparently. Primarily, that was because of a great jobs number. The jobless claims are at 45-year lows. Do you know that? 45-year low for the jobless claims. Now, those on Wall Street see a rapidly heating economy. And what does that mean? Well, that means that the Fed may raise interest rates sooner rather than later. That means money gets more expensive. You're going to be charged more to borrow. And a lot of these fat cats on Wall Street have grown very accustomed to easy money. You know, during the era of Obama, the weak economy, they didn't have to worry about it. Now that they got Trump in the Oval Office, you got a strong economy. Well, you're going to start worrying about higher interest rates, and also factoring in was this massive spending bill that further bankrupts this country. So, I just want to tell you this is something about Limbaugh. He dances to his own tune. And he's always at the end, he knows what he's doing. That's my experience. And you know what? I think we kind of do the same here on the Chris Salcedo Show. We admitted yesterday that hardly anybody else is talking about the debts and deficit, even though we have, but we haven't spent half as much time. That's why I dedicated almost the entire show yesterday to telling you guys how important it was to the future of your children that we don't continue to wallow in debt. All right, look, you guys on hold, stick with me. I got Michael Quinn Sullivan coming in. Empower Texans, folks. This conservative group is so powerful. They are able to prevent teachers from voting. I got to find out how this happens. Back in a minute, the Chris Salcedo Show on The Voice. Let's get to our guest, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Quinn Sullivan, president of Empower Texans and its premier project, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. He's a former newspaper reporter, Capitol Hill staffer, and think tank vice president, and an Eagle Scout to boot. Sir, welcome back to the Salcedo Show.
Hey, Chris, it's great to be with you this morning, my friend.
You know, I was just told by State Senator Paul Betancourt something you guys at Empower Texans ought to know. In the Houston area, Sarah Davis is putting out a flyer blaming the Texas Senate for failing on property tax reform. I know it's laughable, but she just basically multiplied all of her adversaries by attacking the conservatives in the Senate. I don't know if that's smart. Right now, only the governor of the state of Texas has come out against her candidacy. It looks like she's eager to take on the entire Senate, which is okay by me. I just wanted you guys to have a heads up on that, okay?
No, I appreciate it. Sarah Davis, like a lot of these establishment Republicans, live in an alternate universe, apparently.
Yeah.
I fail to understand how she thinks it passes the fact test. You know, I think Texans are better informed than maybe she thinks we all are.
Well, Sarah Davis, Wendy Davis, it's hard to tell them apart. That's right. Let's talk about something that I was surprised when I found this out, because another Texas representative has made an accusation against you guys at Empower Texans. And look, I've been fans of the organization and worked closely with you guys over the last couple of years, and proud of what you guys do, being staunch conservatives. I had no idea how powerful you were. Let me read from Representative. I mean, seriously, I got to figure out how you're doing this. And that, this is what was put out by Representative Jason Villalba on his Twitter account. He said, if you are a Texas educator, please vote. There are some fringe ideologues, mainly in Power Texans, who want to keep you from exercising your God-given right to vote. The best response to them is to show up on 3/6. That's the date of the primary, folks. See you at the polls. So I got to ask you, Michael, how are you at Empower Texans preventing teachers from voting?
Look, Jason is known for his late night drunken tweeting as a Dallas state rep.
Here we go.
I think that maybe he started confusing his late night fantasies with his daytime tweeting now. Apparently, what we have done, what he's reacting to, is we've reached out to Texas teachers and said, your superintendents and your school boards are going to be asking you to politicize your classroom. They're going to be asking you to use tax-funded school district resources to engage in the upcoming election. That's illegal and unconstitutional according to the Attorney General of Texas. According to the laws and the Constitution of Texas, that's illegal, and you should not tolerate that. And somehow Jason twists that into not wanting people to vote. In fact, we're the guys saying we need more people voting.
Right.
But what we don't want to have happen, what no one wants to see, is government putting its thumb on the election. When you have the bureaucracy of superintendents and the people who reside in those big, massive palaces known as administration buildings, putting their thumb on the polls, intimidating teachers, intimidating staff, and in a lot of cases, pushing far left ideologies. Most of Texas classroom teachers are a pretty conservative lot. In fact, that's why a lot of them become teachers, quite frankly. And yet, you look at the administration tends to be very off from that.
Okay, so let me ask you now. What sort of activities have you guys uncovered that is happening? Because we uncovered an example of what we believe to be left-wing indoctrination in Fort Worth ISD, which we'll get here in a minute. Right. But what sort of practices are being undertaken by these administrations? I'm assuming they're prompting folks to vote liberal or progressive, correct?
What they're doing there, and we're talking very explicit superintendents coming into the teachers' lounge, principals coming in, saying, hey, I just got the phone with the superintendent. You all have to get out, and I don't care if you're a Democrat, if you don't want to engage in partisan politics, doesn't matter. You must vote in the Republican primary, and you must vote for, and then starts giving a list of candidates, like this guy, Scott Milder, who's running for lieutenant governor against St. Patrick, a guy who a lot of folks in his hometown assumed was a Democrat and thought he was going to be running as a Democrat. He'd been on this a high-tax, high-spending city councilman in his hometown. They assumed he was a Democrat, So this is, and so teachers are being pushed this, and they worry about it a lot. We have had now lots of reports coming in from teachers based on this letter that we sent out, telling us these stories and saying they're worried that they haven't voted in primaries because they don't want to get involved in that stuff. And now, if they don't go vote, that's public information. Who votes in what primary is public information, and they're worried about what happens if they don't vote in the primary that their superintendent and principal are telling them to vote in.
So they're worried about
people who don't buy them. They don't buy them school supplies. They make them work weird hours, on and on. And now they're trying to tell them how to vote. If I were a teacher, I'd be infuriated.
So you are not trying to prevent teachers from voting. You are saying that you would like these school districts to stop utilizing government resources to drive a certain political agenda inside of the government-run schools.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Superintendents, amazing. You look at the contracts of superintendents around the state. Almost all of them have this a very overarching indemnification clause that essentially says the superintendent can do no wrong, and if he does, the taxpayers will cover it no matter what.
Right.
And so a lot of these teachers, the thing that has to go, we hope teachers are thinking about is, when the superintendent, the principal, the deputy assistant superintendent, whoever comes in telling you to engage politically, as a teacher in the classroom, that someone's going to eventually get sued. A parent is going to sue a candidate, whoever, because it is illegal and unconstitutional. And the teacher has to ask, is the school board and the superintendent going to be there to protect me? The same people who don't protect you right now, what makes you think they're going to protect you when you get caught doing something that the Attorney General of Texas says is unconstitutional? I
understand. So let me get this. So I got to ask you the question. And by the way, we're talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan of Empower Texans. How does Empower Texans wanting to stop illegal activity from happening inside of government institutions, meaning government institutions should not be putting their thumb on the scale, how does that translate from wanting to not have illegal activity in the schools translate to preventing teachers from voting? How does Jason Villalba get there?
If I understood how Jason Villalba reached the conclusions that he reached on anything, I'd probably need to be in therapy. But where I think some of this is driving from is at the Austin Independent School District earlier this week. We have the audio. We're going to be pushing it out a little bit later today, of a school board member during the school board meeting saying, okay, all of you Democrats in the audience, remember, you've got to turn out and vote in the Republican primary against Dan Patrick. That was during the school board meeting.
Wow.
So we see those sorts of things going on. I think Jason Villalba really hopes that school districts will be convincing Democrat teachers to don't go vote in the Democrat primary, go vote in the Republican primary, so that we can either vote against Dan Patrick or for Jason Villalba.
I had no idea that Jason was coming out so strong against the lieutenant governor. So we'll have to, if he comes back on the program, I'll have to ask him about that. We uncovered something that we believed was going on up in Fort Worth ISD, which was along these lines, which was a screening of a documentary, and then a Democrat invited to speak after the documentary, and then a left-wing extremist school board member coming in and talking about critical race theory, which basically means that our laws in the United States are white laws, and they're designed to keep whites in power. We were told by the Fort Worth ISD this wasn't a mandatory assembly for students, but it was rather a mandatory assembly for teachers, which, okay, I'll leave it up to the folks whether they want to believe that or not. But they still have not addressed the teaching of critical race theory and if this is sanctioned criteria by the Fort Worth ISD. But I imagine they're not the only ones going through this around the state.
From the response that we're getting from our letter, I wish I could say that Fort Worth was an aberration. Unfortunately, it's not. And it's, in Fort Worth, it's this thing you uncovered. In other places, it's, you must sign up for email lists from these various candidates, these, assemblies that are all, given the panache of be a good citizen and be engaged in the process, but only be engaged goes the subtext. If you take this particular position, the worst thing I think about the what you uncovered was that you have a very honorable man, that featured in the documentary, a horse cutting Hall of Fame member, and all this, and the documentary that's just kind of looking at this fellow's life, and yet then it's turned into that was the hook, I think, to bring kids in. To bring, to kind of justify teachers, making teachers go to it. But then, it's kind of the bait and switch, come in for the free pizza and then get the 9-hour pitch on the timeshare.
Yeah. Exactly. And what we saw was, as a matter of fact, the Democrat basically said, how many of you feel that you're not being represented in Washington right now? Of course, we all know which political party's in charge in Washington. And it got political. Taking a documentary and going political is fine as long as you have both sides there. But Fort Worth ISD only chose to have liberals present. Michael Quinn Sullivan, everybody, president of Empower Texans. Where can folks go if they want to see about your efforts to make sure that there's no illegality in government-run schools?
Hey, we'd love to have folks check out our website, empowertexans.com, empowertexans.com. They can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those things. Also.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too, Chris.
And that's going to do it here for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide on the VIDA Television Network. I want to remind everyone that I think I'm one of the few individuals on television who actually allows you to directly interact with me, unfiltered, live. All you got to do is call AM 700 KSEV 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV from the hours of 7:30 a.m. Eastern until 10 o'clock Eastern, and let your voice be heard. Maybe you don't think we covered something fairly, or maybe you don't think we've covered something enough. It's your chance to weigh in. You can also do so via social media. Go to chrissalcedo.com. All of our contact information is there, or you can do it live in real time during those same hours at Chris Salcedo TX. Even off hours, we respond to Twitter, and it's a good chance if you make a compelling argument, it'll be featured on the show if I'm not on the air at the time the following day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. We'll see you next time.